welcome everyone to this very special episode of Real Time. My name is Ryan. With me as always is Robbie. Robbie, how you doing?
I'm good, Ryan. How are you?
I'm pretty good. Yep. Now, in this special, it's a belated May the 4th be with you, or depending on what side you're on, Revenge of the 5th Star Wars special from our episode 16. It was so much Star Wars news that we decided to make this its own special. So.
Yeah, I think it was if we had so much news in general, like it was so ridiculous that if we tried to fit in another like 20 minutes worth or half an hour worth of Star Wars related content, it might have been a bit of an overkill. So we thought we'll separate it out. Ryan's a big Star Wars fan. I don't.
Nerd would be the word for it.
I wasn't going to go there, but you know, if you want to push yourself out there, well,
I don't care. I'll wear the t-shirt. Yeah, exactly. All right, we'll get into it. According to Variety, Russian doll creator Leslie Headland is spearheading a new female-centric Star Wars show for Disney+. Now, this will tie fans over until the next Star Wars movie in December 2022. Now, looking at this, I think it's potentially going to be an Ahsoka TV series, because there's rumours that Ahsoka's going to be in Season 2 of Mandalorian.
So they can essentially spin it off.
Potentially it's going to be this as well, and it may kind of follow up on Star Wars Rebels, where the end of that, where Ahsoka and Sabine,
by the way.
Spoilers, went off to find Ezra Bridger, which we'll get to later on as well. So it could be a backdoor to that. I guess we'll wait and see.
It makes sense. I mean, essentially, they got the opportunity on the platform to build out a universe around these shows. Why wouldn't you? You know, you could easily have all sorts of bits in universe. So yeah, I can see why that would be the running theory. It sounds pretty solid to me. And if it ends up being something completely separate, it still doesn't mean it's not. It'll be part of the universe anyway.
It'll be part of the universe somehow. It just won't tie directly into some things. And I mean, December 22, it's, you know, what are we... 30-odd months away?
Yeah, give or take. But, and that's assuming there isn't changes, because obviously with the coronavirus, had these impacts and roll-ons. Yeah. So you'd hope by most of the cinema stuff by the end of 2022 is supposedly back to normal, more or less. So you'd hope that as long as Avatar gets out in its slot for the previous Christmas, then it shouldn't have the knock-on effect, because obviously the idea was to have one Avatar, one Star Wars, one Avatar, one Star Wars for like 6 years or whatever it is.
And the fact that this is Disney Plus, I don't think that'll affect it too much. It'll just be straight onto a streaming service.
Yeah, I think it depends on how important it is for them tying people over. I mean, I don't think it probably is. I mean, if it comes out, obviously it is, but obviously Mandalorian's doing around. In fact, comes out every year around the same time, around that kind of October, November range. Everyone's going to be happy anyway.
Yeah, as long as each one piggybacks the other sort of
exactly.
thing.
And if there's stuff, but I mean, it's just like anything. There's a balance there to have as well. Obviously, you don't want too much overkill as well.
No. And speaking of other Disney Plus shows, Tony Gilroy, the co-writer of Rogue One, he's to return as a showrunner on the Cassian Andor series, which is set 5 years before Rogue One.
Yeah, I think there was a showrunner, and the showrunner kind of decided that they obviously, after a couple of episodes, because I think they got only like 4 or 5 weeks into shooting, I think is what I remember. We talked about it on a previous episode anyway. So I guess maybe the showrunner is just like, it's not me, like I can't do this. Needed to step down, and so they needed to bring someone else to run the show. And obviously Gilroy knew the material pretty well, being one of the writers, and he obviously would continue to, like, as we are aware, there was a whole bunch of stuff to do with reshaping the film and the post-production and reshoots and stuff, and he was involved in that as well. So it makes sense that if he's got that kind of ability and Disney's happy with his progress and how his work is, you know, then they're going to ask him and approach him to do this sort of stuff, and he's obviously been happy to do it.
Yeah, and Rogue One, I feel, was definitely well accepted by fans and critics alike.
It's interesting.
As a sort of I won't say part of the Skywalker saga, but it kind of is in a way, but kind of off
the side,
its own branch as well.
Because it takes place connectively to the main bit of the franchise.
Yeah,
the interesting thing is, I think it was reasonably well received, but not like massively received, but like generally so. But I think in hindsight,
it's not like the original Star Wars.
No, but I think in hindsight, after everything else that's come since, I think people appreciate it even more. Yeah, because it feels a little bit more true to like what they thought Star Wars was, while being
and what it should be.
What it should be, original enough reference and material to the original films, but enough of its own thing. Yep. And I think that's been obviously one of the big concerns with the entire new trilogy, is that how much of it felt like rehashes of old ones, and also how far it drifted from feeling a Star Wars. And I think when you look at it, Rogue One's actually pretty deftly closer to that feeling
Yeah.
in both directions. It's got enough new and enough old that it kind of just balanced right, and I think maybe it'll be used as a touchstone for a lot more future Star Wars projects. So again, makes sense to bring them on board if Disney feels like that might be the sensible option.
Yeah, my only criticism with it is I hope they don't go last 20 minutes of Revenge of the Sith and just shoehorn a whole bunch of information in there to make it tie up
Oh,
to
with the
immediate
series
next thing, which
Yeah.
will be Rogue One.
run itself, yeah.
So, I guess somewhere through there, Cassian Andor's got to get the Imperial droid K2SO and reprogram him somehow.
Yeah, and even explain where he came from, like
Yeah.
they how he got involved. I think that would be the point and the focus of the series is why would you get involved with the Resistance and how he became so infamous within the Resistance itself and to the level he was. I mean, it's an interesting idea for a show, but it goes back to the same idea I had with Solo, which is like, does it really matter?
Yeah.
Is it one of these stories that really need to be told in this format?
And even that, I think we've talked before, like, I'd be better off seeing that as Disney Plus show as opposed to the movie.
Yeah,
but probably told slightly better. Maybe.
I think you're right. I think in this case, this is the right platform for it. That it's being Disney Plus. Perhaps more so than say doing this as a comic series or a series of books or whatever. But yeah, it does question. You have to question when you tie things together. You don't want it to, exactly as you said before, feel like you have to kind of put everything into place very haphazardly. If you plan it out where it feels like, we've talked about this before, a natural progression, where it feels like the situation where you find the character the next time feels like it was naturally earned by the show prior. And Clone Wars and Rebels and stuff have done that very well throughout their runs, to put characters in positions not specifically where it felt like they had to be. It felt like that they naturally made their way there, and you want that in the show. So if it goes down that path, then you got nothing to worry about.
Yeah, I watch the space. I mean, I'll be sitting down to watch it. And just to call you out on something, you were talking about Cassian Andor joining the Resistance. They weren't the Resistance at that point.
Yeah, I know.
The Rebel Alliance.
The Rebel Alliance. Sorry,
It's the early concept of the Rebel Alliance.
I forgot. Sorry, I forgot. Yeah. All right. So this is why you're the Star Wars nerd.
Yeah, exactly.
And you could see the look on your face, and I was like, I've said something, haven't I?
You've said something
I just
to annoy
knew
me.
there was something in my head, and I was like, there's something I missed.
Well, to be fair, if I didn't call you out on it, it'd probably be listeners going, well, actually, he said the wrong thing.
He did the wrong thing,
Yeah.
and then he said, "I'm praying mantis." Sorry, it had to be said.
Yeah.
And then he said the wrong title of the movie. Like the movie was wrong, and I was
right,
disgusted
we'll
with it. I was disgusted with that outcome.
Talking of Disney Plus shows, we've mentioned in previous episodes of Rosario Dawson playing Ahsoka in the season 2 of Mandalorian. It's also been rumoured/announced in a way that Temuera Morrison is coming back to be playing Boba Fett in the Mandalorian season 2. Now, if you remember, there was an episode where they went to Tatooine, where the Mandalorian shot, I can't remember the character's name, but it was Ming-Na, her character, and she was injured, and then she's like left in the desert, and you hear like ka-chink, ka-chink.
That's right. You
like
see a
cowboy,
foot,
you
like
see a foot and someone
a shadow.
kneel, but-
Yeah.
And the last time you hear that noise, it's from Boba Fett on Cloud City in Empire. So a lot of people are speculating that he could come back. Now, it could either be a voiceover, which, is probably the way that this is going to be. Like,
I mean, the series is
under the armor,
in
but-
theory, the series has already done this because obviously, not a lot of the time when you've got the actual Mandalorian on set, it wasn't always
Pedro Pascal.
exactly.
no.
It wasn't always acting. Someone was just his voice because they would do stunts where he wasn't available, so they would just put someone in the suit who's roughly the same. He's got a double, just put the double in there.
Yeah.
So it could be anyone in the suit and just get Tim to do the voice.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see if what does happen. I mean, there could be a stunt where it does involve, say, a stunt actor in the costume, but then he might actually he'll remove the helmet because we've seen him as Jango Fett without the helmet.
Yes, of course. Yeah.
But from what I know of the comics, Boba Fett never removed his helmet like the Mandalorian.
Okay.
So
if that ever happened, it would be for a very specific reason.
Yeah.
Much like it was for the Mandalorian. And yeah, it would be one of those moments you'd build to, wouldn't you? In the same idea that all of a sudden you've seen the reveal, and then if you're going to see under the helmet, what's it going to look like? Who's it going to be?
Is it going to be scrapped up and scarred or what?
Exactly.
And of course, speaking of Temuera Morrison playing a older, grown-up Boba Fett, I should have mentioned as well, is that with Ahsoka being in it, we could also see an aged Commander Rex make a live-action version as well from the Clone Wars.
And it's all still him as well.
Still him as well, yeah.
Well, that's the other thing. You get options to put multiple versions where they age him or scar him in different ways, and it's still technically different characters.
And I mean, to me, I think that would kind of work well, because the end of the original Rebel series, before their new 7th season started, it mentioned how Captain Rex fought in the Battle of Endor, and there's people that have pointed out there's an older guy with a beard who they think is Captain Rex before that was announced in Rebels.
Oh, okay.
So now they've kind of...
They've basically said
they've kind of set that up and, in a way, kind of retconned it, but kind of not. So
because it was never really
as well.
It's never really confirmed. They just go, oh, that could be definitely him.
It's just like an extra that hired for the day with like a scraggly beard, and someone went, "Hey, it looks like Captain Rex," but no, they
just some
really
guy.
thought about that. Yeah. And of course, speaking of season 2 of Mandalorian as well, a well-known Mandalorian from the Clone Wars, Bo-Katan Kryze, who is voiced by Katie Sackhoff. She's rumoured to be coming into the season 2 as well.
To play the same character.
The same character, which will be interesting, because we saw at the end of the first season of Mandalorian the Darksaber held by Moff Gideon. And the last time we saw the Darksaber in any Star Wars lore before this, it was being given from... I can't remember the Mandalorian from Rebels. I'm killing myself now. It'll come to me. But we saw Bo-Katan Kryze with it towards the end of Rebels.
So obviously you've got to explain how she lost it.
Yeah.
And having that character in there makes sense.
Yeah, coming back to find or follow Moff Gideon.
Or, it got attacked and stolen off her.
Exactly.
And she's trying to track it down. Yeah, that would make a lot of sense. That I can see why you would think that.
We'll carry on with some more Mandalorian news, because there seems to be a lot here. Simon Pegg, who's played Dengar in Clone Wars previously, not in live action, that was a different character altogether, which I think I actually looked this up, because when I watched Clone Wars recently, a couple of months ago, and I binge-watched the hell out of it, I don't think I picked up it was Simon Pegg, and I don't think I noticed his name in the credits.
But then later on you did see it. When I saw this, it said that he's done it twice. He's done it once for Clone Wars and once for a video game. Might be... Battlefront, or
I think it is a Battlefront or something
like that. So it wasn't the Lego one. I know that. No. He did a lot of voices for the Lego one as well.
But yeah, so he was in The Force Awakens as Omar Plutt. Unkar Plutt. Sorry, thank you.
That's all right.
Forgetting my own name.
See, I got Resistance Rebels. I'm okay with
Unkar Plutt.
So I'm fine with this.
And he said he's bled and he's sweat for Star Wars. Because he was in a big, fat suit in the sun.
I remember this.
So, now he can just be in a voice booth.
Well, it won't be a voice. I think he actually wants to play the live.
Yeah.
And considering what we've just been talking about with bringing these actors that have previously done voice work to bring live characters to life, it doesn't seem like a hard push. Plus, the character itself is quite human, so it makes casting a male in the role reasonably easy. So he could fit the role pretty well, I think.
Yeah, just to go on a slight tangent here, there's something that I know that you might not know, is that after The Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi, Dengar apparently became more of a cyborg, and he changed his name. I think it's Gas Saxon or something like that.
Okay.
I forgot to look it up, but I know his appearance completely changed.
Is this
more robot?
Is it got attacked? But is this like more of a legacy thing, or is this a part? Because they can change the canon.
I think part of it's legacy, but part of it's also canon.
Okay,
so it's like part of a comic or something, like a bounty hunter comic.
I mean, I guess the people that are in charge of the show know well enough of what they can and can't do, or what want to do. So, I mean, Peg's enough of a fan of the franchise as well that he would know well enough.
He'd probably know about it as well, if that's the case.
But even that's the case, there's nothing stopping them from using CG effects to do that, even with him. So, it'd be very interesting.
Just give him
half
a morph suit or something.
Yeah, or certain limbs that are replaced with green elements, and...
I mean, they've got the technology these days. What of our final major sort of Mandalorian news there? Pausing for no reason whatsoever. Is casting for a live-action Ezra Bridger happening. They're looking for an Asian, but open to Indian, Latino, or Middle Eastern descent, between 30 and 40. It could possibly show up late in Mandalorian. I don't know if it'd be season 2 or not.
I think they're finished filming, so if they're casting, unless they do add an extra thing in a scene before it releases, and it's, as you said, like it's planned to be like
it's one of the later episodes.
Yeah, just something. A little setup. But I'd say if you're looking for casting now or around this time, you're looking more for the next season.
For season 3 at least, which I think is under pre-production.
Yeah, it would make sense because they probably want to be shooting. I think they started shooting the second season about the time the first season started coming out. So you'd be wanting to shoot your third season by the time the second season's being released. So casting now for a shoot in couple months, probably reasonably understandable.
Yeah, and I mean, as I mentioned before, there's a female-centric live-action series happening, which could feature Ahsoka and the other female characters from Rebel who would be looking for Ezra. Because the last time we saw Ezra, he was on the bridge of a Star Destroyer with Grand Admiral Thrawn going into light speed. And that's how Rebels ended. And then it left with that, with like Ahsoka going off. She's going to like look for Ezra. So we'll see what happens with that and see what's going to be a backdoor to what.
Obviously, it's funny because we've talked about this before, and there was. I remember there was obviously some disappointment with Clone Wars, like that they got to a certain number of seasons and then it was get cancelled, and then they got an extra season, and it was like, well, it's good to got an extra season, but they kind of could have gone for 3 seasons, I guess.
Yeah.
But I think, especially Dave Filoni, have looked at this opportunity with these live action shows and go, we can continue the story in other forms just like we always could.
Yeah.
And so we might as well end these animated shows on a point where we can potentially pick up stories in other formats, including the live action ones, which I think is really clever. Like, I really do think that's a really smart way of doing it. And it doesn't, again, it feels more naturally earned rather than being forced.
Yeah.
Like I was talking about before. So I can see, the more I talk to you about these things, the more I kind of see these little connective dots where essentially Disney and Lucasfilm and Dave Filoni specifically, but probably also Jon Favreau and all those involved with like Mandalorian and the Star Wars things, are all looking at these ways to build the universe where they can create connective tissues and continue to expand the universe, but also have it linked and have little hints of things and crossover characters and all this sort of stuff, which is a really good way of doing it. It's essentially the same way that, in a lot of ways, Marvel's been doing with their universe, but a lot of it's just been film up until this point.
Yeah.
And it's probably where even those sorts of TV shows are going, you know, we people are going, well, so how do these TV shows work? And they be kind of folded into the movies. It's not always necessary that you see everything, but if you do, you're going to get more richly rewarded. So I can only hope that's definitely the case.
Yeah, and I definitely think too is that one of the interesting things to note as well is that at the end of Rise of Skywalker, you hear all the deceased Jedi voices as well.
Well, that's it.
Rey.
I assume they're deceased.
Yeah, you assume they're deceased, and one of them was Ahsoka, which I think surprised a lot of people.
It did, yeah.
Since Mandalorian is set up 5 years after Return of the Jedi, and then there's the female-centric episode which is coming up, which could feature Ahsoka, is that potentially going to feature her death? And, you know, it's going to not necessarily go back to shoehorning that in, but it could lead up to that.
Well, again, it's the same thing. If it feels like it's earned, then it'll make
work, yeah.
the Rise of Skywalker's appearance more, I don't want to say valid, because it's always valid, but more worthwhile, because you know what's happened to the character at that point, so that when you go back and revisit the movie after watching the series, you get more out of it. And I think that's the great opportunity for these sorts of things, where you can create a universe around these sorts of... You have certain characters and they appear, like you said, if this character's set up to appear in Mandalorian, but then it crosses over to the goal of the characters that we knew for the end of an animated series, but for actually a new spin-off show that stars them, that's genius. Like, because you've just gone and connected all these things together, and the Mandalorian, for example, is not reliant on that character perhaps turning up, but just having them there and then having it connect to the later spin-off just adds a bit more richness to everything, you know, creates that universe that the whole franchise is about. So,
and of course, one of the other interesting things is that one of the voices we didn't hear was Ezra, so it's alluded that towards the end of Rise of Skywalker, he's at least still alive, so if he happens to appear in that show, we at least know he's going to make it out.
Yeah, it makes sense.
I guess, or at least, depending on how far it's set, he's going to make it past the end of Rise of Skywalker timeline.
Well, again, as I said to you, it also comes down to making sure it feels earned. It's not shoehorned. It doesn't feel like characters are put into places or situations happen that have to happen, because that's when people feel awkward about it. So it's like Revenge of the Sith, and like people don't hate that movie, but they do hate some of the last bits of that movie because everything
the
kind
last
of
20 minutes is to me especially is just shoehorned in. It's like, well, not necessarily being called Darth Vader, because that's what about halfway through he's called Darth Vader, but
becoming the actual visage
but becoming the whole costume of what everyone knows of Darth Vader, the twins being born, the twins being named,
like, Padme dying,
where
they end up, where the twins end up,
exactly,
where Obi-Wan turns up, where Yoda's going to go, where Leia gets taken away to the all these things, like.
Because like I remember going to the midnight premiere and I was like, with half a dozen friends, and I was like, hey, let's take bets on what the names are called for the twins.
I mean,
it's just like we already know this. We don't really need it.
Like there's things where it's okay. Like if it was just the twins thing, you'd be like, okay, that makes sense. But when you have to have all these elements, like as you said, like if well, yes, they were referring to him as Darth Vader kind of halfway through the movie. If the actual scene of him becoming Darth Vader had happened way earlier in the movie, say 2/3 of the way through, you've still got all of a sudden the expectation like, ooh, what's going to happen? Because he could turn up again. Like there literally could have been a chance for George Lucas to actually go, right, so he freaks out like he does in the movie, and then what did he do next about it? Like the way the movie ends, for example, is him going, no, and then that's it. Like, there's nothing else with that character. So you go, well, that doesn't really, other than him being directly upset, it doesn't really show me what he did next about the thing he was upset about. So there was an opportunity there. Had that come slightly earlier and there was a little bit more of a runtime, all of a sudden Darth Vader's trying to track down Obi-Wan knowing he's still alive, or, and trying to figure out what happened to Padme and all these things. And they could have easily been in the movie and they weren't. And it's not to say that it needed to be, but it's just saying that's a different take on it. It could have been
done differently, and it could have been the full armor and everything halfway through.
Yeah, and it would have subverted the expectations that you knew the end was going to end up with just him and the Darth Vader suit, and that was it. Because all of a sudden that character could do something you're not expecting. Just because it didn't happen by the time we saw the first Star Wars. And it would actually, had they not done it in Rogue One, for example, it actually would have been very interesting if, it would have given the opportunity to show off some more of his powers as well, for example. Like if he went and trashed a planet, turned up to a planet and just absolutely lay waste to a bunch of stuff. That would be a very interesting way to end your movie. And the opportune thing would have been for him to go to Naboo, for example. Yeah. Perfect example, and the kind of that beach area and the hills that he liked. All of a sudden, he just he just lays waste to it. For example,
the holiday home that him and Padme shared.
Exactly,
you could have just laid waste to it as a bad memory.
As a bad memory, he doesn't want to see it, and he knows that she's dead, so he just burns it to the ground. That
would be ideal.
That would be amazing. You'd just be like, oh my god, he's pissed. But they didn't. George decided they didn't want to go down that path. So again, these are all opportunities that you can put into surprise audiences or see something they weren't perhaps expecting. They knew the bit they were expecting, but not the bit they weren't, if that makes sense.
Yeah. The other thing here is, though, that we've got 19 years to fill between Revenge of the Sith and A New Hope. So it's possible that could have happened somewhere, and this is where the TV series comes in. They could make a series about it.
It is totally true. God, you imagine that well, I'm not going to say the adventures because it's a really bad term, but the misadventures of Darth Vader. But honestly, you could. It
almost sounds comedic.
It does sound comedic, but you know what I mean. You could be
coming this summer, the
misadventures of Darth Vader. Sorry, James Earl Jones.
Oh god.
No, but what I mean is you could literally have a Star Wars TV show that was literally like Star Wars Empire, and it was literally just following what the Empire did for 20 years.
Yeah, that. Pitch it.
But that's what I mean.
What's Taika's number? He's local. It was 021.
But that's what I mean. You have always got these opportunities. But the great thing about if you do a series like that, you can have all these connections to the Rebel Alliance, and you can have all these connections to different characters that we know existed by doing it. And you can do this in any form. It could be books or animated, or it could be live action. It could be anything. But it doesn't make any of it invalid or wrong. It gives you the opportunity to tell these stories. But do them in ways that, much like Clone Wars, you kind of knew what was going to happen. You always knew it was going to be Order 66, right? But it wasn't about that. It was about where the characters went and what happened after that.
Yeah, and it was more about, I think Dave Filoni's always said that Clone Wars was all about the clones.
Yeah.
It wasn't about Anakin, Obi-Wan, any of the other Jedi at all. It was more about the clones, because that's what it was, the Clone Wars, not the Jedi Wars.
And what the impact of those clones have on the universe and the people in it. Yeah, I can
see. And that's why most of them, especially Commander Rex, Captain Rex then became Commander Rex, like always took their helmet off, is because you keep a helmet on someone.
Don't know. It doesn't enough characterization.
Like you take the helmet off every now and then, it gives them a personality and a difference because they all had like different haircuts, different color hair. So it gave each clone a personality as well, which was great.
So, but again, see, this is it, and this is where I think why, and I totally agree. Like heaps of people, I've watched some of the Mandalorian behind the scenes and stuff. And we're talking about Filoni and how he just is the right person for the franchise at this moment, and he totally is. He's just got that right mindset that he knows what's the important things to focus on, what things are not. And
he pretty much got taught by George Lucas.
I know,
about Star Wars.
And I've watched them talk about
it. There's two people that know the most about Star Wars in this world: George Lucas, Dave Filoni.
Yeah.
Me. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah. You said 2, not 3, but that's
I know.
Okay.
I know. But in that order, no, I'm kidding. Yeah. I know enough, but probably not as much as some people do.
Who's the guy that has Rancho Obi-Wan?
Rancho Obi-Wan?
Yeah, the guy that collects all the collectibles. He used to work for Lucasfilm. He must be like number 3.
I've got no idea.
He must be like number 3 in the world. It'd be like those 3 would be like the people that you would want to talk to who would probably know the most. But yeah, it's crazy because we've talked about this as well. Like the fandom is really fickle, and we know this, and we can easily be here. I mean, I'm critical of everything, so which is fine. And you're much more critical of Star Wars, than I would be. I mean, by comparison.
True.
So like, it's easy for us to like cast aspersions against things and be very judgmental, but it's always, I think that this is these things that make people interested. They get excited, and they get excited about is the opportunities for things. And when you start seeing things that go well, you want to see more of that, and that sort of thing expand. And I think that's going through what we've talked about with all the Disney Plus stuff. I think they've all got great opportunities to do that, as long as they don't, as we talked about, get into these really forced places.
Yeah, I'm all for prequel stuff, but don't shoehorn it in.
Yeah, that's totally it in a nutshell.
Moving on to other Star Wars news and potentially future Star Wars movies. Taika Waititi is to direct a future Star Wars movie in 2021 or 2022.
Okay. No, I see. I did like the fact that obviously the rumors went round and he denied it, and then when the rumors came out, he's like, "Oh, I guess I lied."
Yeah, kind of much the same way Ewan McGregor did for like 4 or 5 years about the Obi-Wan series.
Yeah, I guess.
He's like, if they call me up.
I guess he was telling the truth at one point. He probably did say this. Like, at the point nothing had happened. And
then they had contacted him, and they're like, "Don't say a thing.
Don't say a thing. Just pretend to say the same thing if they contact me." Which he would have done anyway.
Yeah,
but that's it. I mean, what do you think about this? Like, this clearly explains why he got very cagey about doing Akira, because obviously he's dropped that for good as far as I'm concerned. But I mean, like, I'm like cautiously optimistic, but then I'm like, do we really want, again, this is going back to December 2022 release of whatever it ends up being. This won't be it. This will be the one that comes probably afterwards. So we're looking at 24. Do we really need more movies right now? I think, like I was also saying, like this TV series, it's got a good opportunity to build the universe, and all of a sudden we've got more films, and I guess again what it has to be, and you don't want a situation like we've talked about with Solo. And that's not to say Solo was problematic because of the shoehorning that we've talked about, but also to do with like just the fact that it was like there was a trouble in the directing and the troubled production and all that sort of stuff. I don't see that happening with Taika. Obviously, he's had enough experience with Disney working on Marvel and working on Mandalorian, so he knows what to expect. I suspect he wouldn't be tackling this movie if he didn't have the support of the people he worked on the Mandalorian with, especially people like Favreau and Filoni and stuff like that as well.
He'd have the back end of them. They'd be like execs.
Yeah, I'm sure, and I wouldn't be surprised if they've got input on the story as well, like when he's got, because he's working with someone else on the story as well. So I would assume that that's the case, but see, it's a big ask, but I'm optimistic, but still cautiously optimistic.
Yeah, I'm definitely keen to see what happened. I mean, his final episode of The Mandalorian was pretty good. I mean, it wasn't too Taika-centric, I guess, like Thor Ragnarok was, where you could go, these are all sort of little Taika inside jokes.
There was a few of them. I mean, the one that got the most criticism was the Stormtroopers not being able to shoot anything.
Yeah.
Which was a bit fourth wall-y breaking, and people didn't really... I mean, they liked the joke, but I think in the context of the show, they thought it was a little bit ridiculous, because these two guys like joking, like talking about the fact they need to shoot something and then constantly shooting at it, and then going, why can't I shoot it, is a bit OTT. Like, I can understand that. But the rest of the Taika-isms, if that's a word I can use, were not as overbearing, I think. And I think they fit well There were some really good moments in it, and I think maybe also having the last episode of the series was both a boon and a bit of a crutch.
Yeah.
Because you've got to set up an expectation for the second series, but you also get the luck of having all the previous story from that season coming to a head.
Yeah.
And so it gives you benefits and drop-offs just like, I guess, anything else.
Yeah.
It's not the pressure of the first episode, that's for sure.
Yeah. It also begs the question, too, of whether he's going to move production to Australia, or dare I say it, New Zealand, because, I mean, Thor Ragnarok was
Australia.
Sydney? Yeah.
Australia, it is Australia. Because, part of it in Australia, he made sure he had, like, a sign-on of Aboriginal crew. That was part of his thing. He could,
and a lot of New Zealand actors.
and a lot of New Zealand actors as well.
Like just mates of his.
Yeah,
really.
I mean that's it. I mean that's true.
Apart from Brett and Jermaine, I guess.
I suspect it'll be the same for this. To be honest, I wouldn't be surprised if we see some famous New Zealand faces turn up again. Some familiar ones, but it depends on what it is. Yeah, I think you're right.
The subject and if it's going to be announced.
I suspect unless the only places that let's put it into more simple forms. The only places that pretty much Disney's making movies these days is places where tax incentives are, and New Zealand's definitely on that card. So is Australia, Atlanta in Georgia in the United States, England. There's Pinewood in Canada, though that's not as utilised as much by them, and I think that's pretty much it. I think that's where most of the Disney movies, unless they've got a location-specific thing, like when they do Pirates of the Caribbean, they're usually in the Caribbean. So it's got a good chance.
Yeah.
And I would think Taika would probably be happier working closer to home, depending on what else he's doing at the time. So, if it's like Thor, then yeah. I mean, the thing that'll be more interesting to tell is that he's got to do the next Thor first.
Yeah.
So if he,
and then Star Wars.
if he shoots that in Australia, it's probably a good boon for them that they'll get the opportunity to do it.
Probably just go off one or the other.
Yeah.
Like, right, that's Thor done. Bring in Star Wars.
Well, that's it. The crews that were doing sets and stuff might just start working on Star Wars straight afterwards, and he just goes off and does post-production on Thor and then comes back and directs it all and starts all over again. But, I mean, it's just hypothetical speaking there, really. Like, it doesn't matter where it is. I mean, it'll be a boon for whatever industry it is because it's a Star Wars film. And it's not like they haven't done Star Wars films there before either in Australia. So
they did 2 and 3 there.
Exactly. So yeah, that's it exactly. So, it's an opportunity, and Fox has their studio lot there, so it's part of it as well, which obviously now Disney owns. So
as far as reutilise that again,
as far as I'm aware, they own it anyway. So yeah.
All right, we'll move on now. Sam Witwer, who's well known in the Star Wars universe from in the Legends side of the story of playing Darth Vader's secret apprentice, Galen Marek, or Starkiller,
that's right.
and also voicing Darth Maul in Clone Wars and Rebels. He and Dave Filoni had made changes to the Darth Maul scene in Solo, which I was shocked about. It was going as far as having Peter Serafinowicz actually coming in and doing the voice, because he was the original voice in Phantom Menace.
Yes, of course.
And then he'd agreed with Dave Filoni and Sam Witwer. I think Witwer must have just been visiting the voice booth or something, or because he's, a big Star Wars nerd himself, he was just there anyway.
Well, I mean, he's doing other voices for things too, to be fair.
Possible, yeah, he could have been. Like, they all agreed that Serafinowicz wasn't working, and they did reshoots with Ray Park, and they got Witwer to revoice it, since he'd been doing the Clone Wars and Rebels the past 10 years, so that sort of felt a bit more natural, as opposed to having someone who hasn't done it in, 20 years to come back and do it. I think it was the bit cool to have Witwer do it over Serafinowicz, in my opinion.
I mean, how much... I mean, outside of... he's been doing it for 10 years. How much outside of the original movie has Serafinowicz done the voice otherwise?
I don't think he has at all.
So
I don't think he's done Darth Maul at all.
So he never...
from Phantom Menace.
So he hadn't been brought in for anything else outside of the Phantom Menace movie?
Not to my knowledge.
Yeah, it was probably some ancillary Phantom Menace stuff that he did, but not anything past that time frame. Well, then it definitely makes more sense, because at that point you were saying Sam's been doing the voice for longer and more often.
Yeah.
So
it's probably more natural to people to hear.
And that's it. It's not that Serafinowicz hasn't got range; he definitely has. But yeah, maybe that's it. I mean, that's the thing. Or say they were perfectly happy with him, but then they were just like, it's not. It could be better. It was good, and if it had been used, it would have been fine, and no one really would have been too fast. But they were like, deep down, we're not as happy with this as we think, and maybe we'll get Sam to give it a shot and see if it's better. And, if they've got the budget for it and they're willing to try it, then why wouldn't you? Makes sense.
Yeah, and since reading this, it definitely makes sense, because one of the last episodes of Clone Wars on Mandalore, the Siege of Mandalore, you see Ahsoka approaching Darth Maul, and he's talking to a whole bunch of different sort of villains, and one of them happens to be Dryden Voss from Solo. So that kind of ties in nicely as well. So that kind of makes more sense as to why they probably would have got Sam Witwer to do that, to tie that in as well, because they probably had a...
What's the time frame there too? Like, is it very similar? We're talking a couple of years difference between that and Solo at that point? It's in the same time range, isn't it?
No,
not exactly,
not
but
really, because this timeline is pretty much marries up to Revenge of the Sith about halfway through at this point.
So
Revenge of the Sith.
We're talking maybe 5.
So just before Order 66 happens.
Okay, so we're talking like 5 to 8 years before Solo.
Yeah, it's at least several years before Solo takes place. So Dryden Voss is probably a younger character at this point, and he hasn't become what he has, but he's still got ties with Darth Maul.
Cool. Which again this is going back to what we were talking about before, which is this is a nice setting that connects things that are not forced, they're just there because that scene would have taken place whether or not that character appeared. And having him there just adds that little Easter egg element or that connective tissue that makes something else better because of it.
And they potentially want to expand on it later on.
Yeah, exactly.
Well.
It gives that opportunity. Yeah, I totally see. That makes sense.
Speaking of Sam Witwer, he came out and said that Rian Johnson didn't do his Star Wars homework, and I quote that, for The Last Jedi, and he says there are Rian Johnson moments in the film, but they just don't fit Star Wars, and he didn't make a compelling argument as to why Luke didn't go and help his sister. Which I can kind of see, but I don't know, like Last Jedi is just one of those movies which kind of doesn't sit well with fans and critics alike.
I don't know. You say fans and critics. Critics were really kind to The Last Jedi.
Were they?
Yeah, when they came out. Okay, so The Force Awakens was generally well received by both, but definitely more by fans. The Last Jedi was better rated by critics, but definitely hated more by the average fan.
Okay.
And Rise of Skywalker was not really liked greatly by either.
Okay.
That's the balance as I recall it, and I have to double check my Rotten Tomatoes scores to verify that, but I'm pretty sure that's how it was. But there's definitely been over time more backlash about The Last Jedi by both fans and even people who were in it.
Well, yeah.
But the critic's voice the general average critic voice hasn't changed, but the average fan voice has only gotten worse, if that makes sense.
I think so, yes.
Somewhere in there's a point.
Yeah, somewhere there.
I don't know about that. It's hard. Like, I think character motivation, like the Luke thing is really... I do remember when I saw The Last Jedi, and you obviously had this whole setup at the end of the previous movie with the lightsaber and everything, and we come back to the planet after the opening sequence, and Luke's like,
just
over his shoulder, and I'm just like, what?
Yeah.
But at the same time, I kind of like that because I didn't expect it. It's kind of like I was expecting it's like this amazing thing, and he's just like, in one move, when you realise later, once he's talking about why he's renounced basically most of his Jedi-ness, and it's kind of a false truth because obviously he's cut himself off, but then he's still being a guardian. When you think about it, he's still being a guardian of the last of the Jedi himself and what those texts were. He's
guarding the books and all that.
It seems partly because it's partly because of what's happened to him, but it's also partly because he doesn't want any other Jedi. He doesn't... Protecting those books means that no other Jedi can exist while he's still around. And so kind of it makes more sense that he would discard that so immediately because he's like, I don't want to see that. It's not who I am anymore. I think as a character point, it's fine. I think the whole thing about his sister, I can kind of see why, but you've got to remember as well, in the character's sense, he's racked with guilt inwardly about basically causing a lot of this too.
Yeah.
And helping Leia is not... He already tried helping Leia before in a different way, and it didn't work for him. So I think that... Yeah, I think it's a much harder question. It's not a very easy thing to say. I mean, we will talk about in this scheme that Mark Hamill himself thought that he didn't agree entirely with the way that, and he was blatantly open about this right from the get-go. It's not like he's said this just in hindsight or anything like that. But he said, look, at the end of the day, it's not my call. I'm the actor. I'll just do if I'm asked to do it.
I just show up, get a paycheck.
I put my opinion in, and if they appreciate it, then they'll add to the character, and if they don't, well, that's fine too. And I'll just do my job and just go home. And so that's it. That's exactly what he did. And I think it's really hard because I think on the scheme of things, I like the fact that Last Jedi does more interesting and ballsy things than the other two movies in the franchise do. And in that series anyway, that trilogy. but I can see why people would have problems with some of them because of what it means to the franchise. And I think people need to remember to separate those two things. That it's interesting. It's more interesting to have more interesting things happen and things that you don't expect to happen, but don't feel bad about feeling bad if you're not happy with the outcome because you didn't feel it's true to Star Wars, because that's a fair call too at the same time. Because you can definitely have both of those. You can definitely have things that you don't expect but still have them feel like Star Wars, and there's nothing wrong with it either. I mean, I personally really enjoyed The Last Jedi, but again, I can see why people wouldn't.
Yeah, I just think between like those three sequel
the sequel
movies,
trilogy,
yeah, there's no... Like, there is, but there isn't an overall story arc between all three of them. And I think we've talked about this previously, is that with The Rise of Skywalker, J.J. Abrams made a sequel to his own movie.
Yeah, and
not to the movie that came before
ignored most of The Last Jedi. Again, I think this comes back to what we've also talked about, which is that... And I would hope, going back to the thing about Taika, and if there's going to be another Star Wars movie before then, and if they're going to be connected, I would hope that there's an arc, that there's a point to making, say, 3 more movies or 4 more movies, that you have a through line. And I think maybe this also applies to what we've been talking about with all the stuff that Filoni's been doing and putting all these little bits out here and there, is that they have an end goal, they have a picture where all these things are going, where characters need to end up, but they're not forcing them there because they've plotted this out and they're creating a natural path for them to all reach their conclusions. Because that's what that trilogy didn't have. It didn't have that arc. It didn't say, right, we're going to introduce this character and where's this character going and where they're going to end up. They've kind of just made it up as they went along. They had some vague ideas here and there, but people had their own input and so forth, but for the most part they made it up as they went, and that's why you end up with a mostly unsatisfying conclusion in Rise of Skywalker.
Yeah, that's a fair call. The final Sam Witwer news is that he also says that Return of the Jedi is a better ending to Star Wars. So he's just completely wiping out
the trilogy, the prequel, sequel trilogy. Yeah, fair enough. So, I mean, he's just gone from saying The Last Jedi is not that great, and so I guess that's not that surprising. Yeah, okay. If at the end of the day, I think this comes back down to where he was saying what he's saying about Luke. Because if he had something that he was happy that felt true to Luke, then he would feel like Luke's story had continued. But I think he feels like where Luke's story was by Last Jedi, then it validates what happened in the previous trilogy, so therefore it is a better ending. And if that's the case, then I can totally understand. I mean, he's not saying that, but I'm reading between the lines here. But I mean, would you agree with that? Like, if you think that if you're disappointed in the way a character responds and don't think it's true to who the character is, then clearly the previous ending is probably the better ending for them.
Yeah, I would definitely say that. I mean, the Return of the Jedi ended on somewhat of a happy note. Like, the Empire's gone, the galaxy's happy, Luke's not really avenged his father, but he's managed to turn his father back to the light side.
Yeah, and their Emperor's dead.
And they're all happy, yeah, and the Emperor's dead, yeah. Not some weird zombie clone which we won't get into.
No, I definitely was...
for another day.
Yeah, I definitely wasn't happy with that. Anyway. That's why I don't get why people were happy with Skywalker over Last Jedi, but anyway, never mind.
Yeah, we'll move on.
Move on. Speaking of George Lucas.
Yeah, George Lucas has confirmed to the Empire magazine that he did consider selling Star Wars to Fox during early thoughts about making the second film, so Empire itself, Empire Strikes Back. But he got too excited about the ideas of what the sequel could be and decided against it.
He actually did not only decide against it, he did the complete opposite, which is basically he made it independently. He didn't even go to Fox. I mean, he did in the end because it went over budget and he had to borrow money. But originally he financed it himself by basically taking the money he made of Star Wars plus getting a loan and then financing the movie himself to make it independently. So that's the complete opposite of selling it. But yeah, it came part of Empire posted basically a 40-year anniversary to Empire Strikes Back and conducted some new interviews and stuff like that. It's on the website. I'm pretty sure it must be for one of either a recent issue or an upcoming magazine. But it's worth reading. It's a very, very good article. But that came out. It's right near the start of the article. After a description of Frank Oz bringing Miss Piggy to the Dagobah set.
Yes, I have heard about that. The myth, I think. I think I'd read somewhere there's like really grainy video of it somewhere. But
no, I wouldn't be surprised if someone filmed it. I'm pretty sure that's what they quoted it, so I'm pretty sure they must have seen the actual footage.
I think I'd read somewhere that it was Miss Piggy and Kermit, but it wasn't Jim Henson. It was like someone else doing kind of a half-ass.
The description only had the description I read only had Miss Piggy.
Okay.
Who's taking the piss and making Mark Hamill laugh.
It's possible it was just Miss Piggy. I may have misread.
I mean, it could be a different day. Who knows? But
it could have been. Yeah.
But anyway, I highly recommend the article. It's on Empire Magazine's website. I think it's like empireonline.com or something like that.
Might have to check it out. Speaking of Rise of Skywalker, there was a weird interaction between Lando and Janna towards the end of where it looks like Lando was potentially hitting on Janna, because he's like, she asks like, where are you from, and it's like, well, let's find out. Like
it was a little
Lando smirk on his face.
It was a little bit creepy. I remember sitting in the seat going uncomfortably like, I really hope that's supposed to be like his daughter or something, because that was creepy ass.
Yeah, there was a lot of people who actually thought it was his daughter, because it turns out that Lando did have a daughter who was taken by the First Order and potentially turned into a stormtrooper, and a lot of people sort of put two and two together.
Yeah, I feel like we've talked about this before, because you were about to talk about something else, but I remember it was mentioned, it was like in one of the not the behind the scenes books, but like one of those like DK encyclopedia books.
Yeah, it was like one of the visual dictionaries.
Dictionaries had mentioned this already, and so this is obviously confirmed and expanded what you're about to talk about, because I was about to say, I completely forgot about this.
Yeah, so according to the novelization, and I think it is, because I think it was one of the visual dictionaries may have confirmed that they were
I think it's
father and daughter.
Yeah, I think it said
but now the novelization says that they aren't related, and that Lando only sympathizes with her because he wants to reunite her with her family.
I think the visual...
he wants to try and get all of the kidnapped children back.
I think the visual dictionary explained that the reason why... We didn't say the two of them were related, but it said that he had a child that had been kidnapped, and that's the motivation for why he would be doing this, more specifically. But I think, then the fandom took it as a hypothesis that he was thinking that maybe he had a daughter that was kidnapped and it was her or whatever.
Yeah, and the thing I want to know about that is that if people are thinking that she is Lando's daughter, what about Finn? He was kidnapped as a child too. Could Finn not be Lando's son?
Yeah, it depends on whether or not he had a son or a daughter. Yeah. But the implication here is obviously that it's more likely he had a daughter if that reaction is because it's a girl and not because it's just, as you're talking about, the novelization. But I feel like maybe the novelization is either that's the way it was always supposed to be, or this is a bit of a backpedal because Disney went, we don't want to make this too creepy.
Yeah. I just think the line in it was just unnecessary, and it could have been something else than, well, let's find out.
Yeah, it could have been. He could have explained like, I've had family that was taken to. Let's find out who you belong to.
Yeah, something like that would have. Yeah. I think it was just the delivery of it and the sly little Lando smirk. It's just Billy.
It's just Billy D, baby. It's Billy D.
Billy D. Williams. We'll move on.
Classic
we'll
Billy D.
end with this. So, Yaddle, who is a female of Yoda species, we're not going to say female Yoda because that implies Yoda's wearing woman's clothing or got makeup on.
Well, we're just going on that path of baby Yoda.
Exactly. That's what I want to try and avoid, because it's
the child.
Or see, even that's kind of
it is
contradictory to the Mandalorian docuseries now. Even they call it the baby.
Well, I know, but it's
a baby of Yoda's species.
Yeah, so but they call it. They called it the child and the baby.
Yeah,
so I think it's just when who you're talking to.
Yeah. So Yaddle, who is a female of Yoda's species, she is set to appear in a Star Wars video game. I think, is it DLC for Battlefront, or is it a...
No, it's the Lego Star Wars.
Lego, of course.
Yeah.
That's right, it is too. That's what it was.
Because that comes out later this year.
Yeah. It's the first time. Yeah, it's the first time she's been in any form of media apart from comics or the Phantom Menace.
And this is going like back 20 years, I think, because the comics were like very shortly after Phantom Menace, I think, is what I read.
Yeah, I think she had short adventures. No pun intended there, but like
set in the universe pre Phantom Menace.
Yeah, she didn't have many adventures because they're just like, just a side character no one probably cares about.
I think they just tried to expand. I mean, it's like they do with all that, trying to expand the characters out and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, it's funny. Yeah, so it was. I think it was one of the websites I go to for ages. Like every time there was a Star Wars thing in it, they would always put. They always finish their game entry thing with "Put Yaddle in it, you cowards." And then this time they got to report on it and say, well, "Yay,
it worked after all this time." Yeah.
It's funny because I just on a side note, I'm pretty sure, and this is going back to Frank Oz, I'm pretty sure I saw a note of a story, and I didn't read the details, and now I wish I had, where it said he hasn't been quite won over by Baby Yoda yet.
Okay.
So the few people that hasn't. So
wow.
Yeah, I need to look out the quote. But I'm just thinking about this with Yaddle and stuff like that. I wonder what he thought about having a female version of the species, like.
Yeah. I don't know, because I mean he did the original puppet as well.
Yeah.
So he would have been under the chair as well.
And someone else would have done the puppet for her because she was a puppet too.
Yeah. But yeah, to me, I think it would be good to see some more media of Yaddle and potentially the backstory of Yoda and his species, or their species, I should say, not just his.
I guess it's not surprising that they'd put her in a Lego Star Wars game because those Lego games put like every character in.
Yeah, like even really obscure characters like Stormtrooper 42.
Yeah,
or like Bob.
Bob,
Bob the Stormtrooper.
Yeah, this is what I mean. Like, they put some really obscure characters in, and even in the Marvel ones and all that sort of stuff, they put these real deep cut comic book character ones in just for the hell of it. So I mean, it's not too surprising, but I mean, it's still interesting. You got to think about all the Lego Star Wars games that have been since that movie came out.
Yeah,
which is all of them, because I think the first one was like 2004.
Yeah, give or take.
2004, I think.
405, yeah.
So, and they've never put her in before, so You're classing yourself a deep cut Star Wars characters at this point, even though I don't think it is, but apparently it is.
Yeah. I guess we'll see what happens. Yeah. I mean, if there's any future media.
Yeah. It'll be, well, there's definitely, it sounds like there's some happy people out there to see Yaddle back.
Yeah.
As weird as it is to say.
I guess we'll see if I choose to play as her at one point or another.
It's probably going to be a trophy.
Possibly.
It'd be like Yoda and Yaddle together or something.
Yeah, and I mean, with Mandalorian, they'll probably pop the child in there as well. It's like players, all three characters or something.
You're probably right, actually. Good call, actually. I didn't think about that. Yeah.
I don't know, maybe it'll be like a kind of a Seinfeld reference where it'll be like Yoda, Yaddle, something instead of like yada, yada, yada. I don't know. They come up with wacky trophy names.
I know. I'm just laughing. I'm not laughing at you. I'm laughing at the idea of it because it's totally accurate to the fact that they would do that.
What they would do.
They would do that.
They're like, what can we do here? Let's make it.
It'll be after the episode. It'll be like, because there's the episode called the yada yada yada. It'll be the yada. It'll be the Yaddle Yoda something.
Yeah. If the child's given a name or something,
it's got to start with Y. Come on, let's be honest.
Surely,
it would make sense at this point. If they don't, everyone's just going to be like, oh, what?
Yeah, it's going to be pointless.
It's going to be something.
Yeah. Anyway, we should wrap this up.
Indeed.
Hopefully we didn't ramble on too long. I think we did at some points, but hopefully it wasn't too boring. I
kind of enjoyed that. It's like an hour to spend talking about Star Wars. I'm perfectly fine with this.
I could go on much longer, but I won't.
I told him beforehand we have to keep this into a reasonable length, and I think an hour is fine, and we're still under an hour, so that's all good. We're all good. Yeah, but it's been good doing a little special on the side on one of these, and we'll have another regular episode sometime soon.
Yeah, and I was also contemplating whether I should make it the Star Wars special or I should make it 16.5, but I was like, Star Wars special wins out.
Star Wars special it is.
It's the holiday special.
I was about to say the exact same thing, damn you. It's like it's the real time Star Wars holiday special for no holiday.
Yeah, we got to market it as that now.
Right, that's what I'm going to totally
label.
That's
going to be the market on Facebook.
That's what it's going to be totally labelled as on Podbean.
Don't even mention Star Wars. Just real-time holiday special.
No, I've got to put Star Wars in there. It's the real-time Star Wars holiday special. Otherwise, people don't know what it is.
Yeah, all right, I'll give you that then.
Yeah, it's going to be the real-time Star Wars holiday special. Not brackets, not on a holiday. In brackets.
Yeah, that'll work. Sure.
What holiday is it? There's no holiday.
As always, like, subscribe, follow us on Podbean, YouTube.
Yep.
Anywhere else?
We're on Spotify. We're on Apple Podcasts. I think we're on Stitcher, and probably some others because they get scraped by the pod things. I don't know what I'm saying anymore.
They're in other pod areas. So wherever you find your pods, find it.
Yeah, and wherever you found this, just share that with people because that might work too.
Yeah.
Thank you again. We will catch you next time.
Bye.
Cheers.